How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, I've got a great story for everyone that I have been waiting to cover for a while, and I finally saw the perfect article in the Wall Street Journal to cover this. Sam Altman, as everybody knows, is one of the founders and I guess the CEO, you could call him, of OpenAI, which basically makes ChatGPT. And Sam got fired from his board about a year or so ago and then was quickly rehired. And there was a whole lot of drama around it. And so I had been waiting for, some additional news, something to come out so that I could cover this. And finally, I found a great piece here that I'm going to share with all you guys here. So this was a piece that was in the Wall Street Journal just a couple weeks ago. And this is titled "The Secrets and Misdirection Behind Sam Altman's Firing from OpenAI, the inside story of how the CEO of the hottest tech company was ousted and just as quickly resurrected." So let's jump in here. On a balmy mid-November evening in 2023, billionaire venture capitalist Peter Thiel threw a birthday party for his husband and, yes, an avant-garde Japanese restaurant located in a century-old converted bank building in Los Angeles' Art District. Seated next to him was his friend, Sam Altman. Thiel had backed Altman's first venture fund more than a decade before and remained a mentor to the younger investor when Altman became the face of the artificial intelligence revolution as the chief executive of OpenAI. OpenAI's instantly viral launch of ChatGPT in November of 2022 had propelled tech stocks to one of their best years in decades, yet Thiel was worried. Years before he met Altman, Thiel had taken another AI-obsessed prodigy named Eliezer Yudkowsky under his wing, funding his institute, which pushed to make sure that any AI smarter than humans would be friendly to its maker. That much Yudkowsky had argued in Time magazine that unless the current wave of AI research was halted, literally everyone on Earth will die. It's a little dramatic. You don't understand how Eliezer has programmed half the people in your company to believe in that stuff, Thiel warned Altman. You need to take this more seriously. So Altman picked at his vegetarian dish and tried not to roll his eyes. This was not the first dinner where Thiel had warned him that the company had been taken over by the EAs, by which he meant people who subscribe to effective altruism. Now, I want to take a pause here for a second. So the whole EA culture is a rather fascinating thing, and I would tell everybody, if you haven't seen my book review on Going Infinite, which is Michael Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis wrote the book called Going Infinite, which is all about FTX and the failure of FTX. And this whole idea of effective altruism, it was permeated, all throughout FTX, and it was a big thing with Sam Bankman-Fried, and with the people that worked for him there. And I don't subscribe to this, however you want to say that. I espouse these beliefs, if you will. EA, I think it's a bunch of nonsense, but like I said, if you haven't seen that episode of the crypto series, go check that out, because I think you will find that whole topic of EAs and effective altruism, I think you will find that very interesting. But anyway, okay. So EA had lately pivoted from trying to end global poverty to trying to prevent runaway AI from murdering humanity. Thiel had repeatedly predicted that the AI safety people would destroy OpenAI. Well, it was kind of true of Elon, but we got rid of Elon. Altman responded at the dinner, referring to the messy 2018 split with his co-founder Elon Musk, who once referred to the attempt to create artificial intelligence as summoning the demon. Now, there's a whole lot we could go into here. Obviously, if you don't know the whole story, OpenAI was founded. Elon was one of the founding members. And then basically Sam Altman, he had a disagreement with Peter Thiel, with, what's his name, Sergey Brin from over at Google. And they all got in a huge fight because, again, this was formed as a nonprofit. And we'll get to that in a minute here. But it was a nonprofit. OpenAI was designed from the very beginning to create this, create AI in a very responsible, safe way, not in this kind of reckless, what I would call the typical Silicon Valley approach of like move quickly and break things. That was not what how OpenAI started. That was not the mission from the beginning, and they've twisted this into something else, and this is a big reason why Elon left. But anyway, all right, I digress. Let's keep going here. So, Elon Musk, who once referred to the attempt to create artificial intelligence as summoning the demon. So nearly 800 OpenAI employees had been riding a rocket ship and were about to have the chance to buy beachfront second homes with the imminent close of a tender offer valuing the company at $86 billion. There was no need to panic. Altman, at 38 years old, was wrapping up the best year of a charmed career, a year in which he became a household name, met with presidents and prime ministers around the world, and most important, within the value system of Silicon Valley, delivered a new technology that seemed like it was very possibly going to change everything. But as the two investing partners celebrated beneath the exposed rafters of LA's hottest new restaurant, 4 members of OpenAI's 6-person board, including 2 with direct ties to the EA community, were holding secret video meetings, and they were deciding whether they should fire Sam Altman, though not because of EA. This account is based on interviews with dozens of people who lived through one of the wildest business stories of all time, the sudden firing of the CEO of the hottest tech company on the planet and his reinstatement days later. At the center was a mercurial leader who kept everyone around him inspired by his technological vision, but also at times confused and unsettled by his web of secrets and misdirections. From the start, OpenAI was set up to be a different kind of tech company, one governed by a nonprofit board with a duty not to shareholders, but to humanity. Let me say that again, governed by a nonprofit board. That's very critical to understand that. Altman had shocked lawmakers earlier in the year when he told them under oath that he owned no equity in the company he co-founded. He agreed to the unprecedented arrangement to be on the board, which required a majority of directors to have no financial ties to the company. In June of 2023, he told Bloomberg TV, "The board can fire me. That's important." Behind the scenes, the board was finding to its growing frustration that Altman really called the shots. For the past year, the board had been deadlocked over which AI safety expert to add to its ranks. The board interviewed Ajay Katra, an AI safety expert at the EA charity Open Philanthropy, but the process stalled, largely due to foot dragging by Altman and his co-founder, Greg Brockman, who was also on the board. Altman countered with his own suggestions. There was a little bit of a power struggle, said Brian Chesky, the Airbnb CEO, who was one of the prospective board members Altman suggested. There was this basic thing that if Sam said the name, they must be loyal to Sam, so therefore they're gonna say no. The dynamics got more contentious after 3 board members in the pro-Altman camp stepped down in quick succession in early 2023 over various conflicts of interest. That left 6 people on the nonprofit board that governed the for-profit AI juggernaut, Altman, his close ally Brockman, their fellow co-founder Ilya Sutskever, and 3 independent directors. These were Adam D'Angelo, the CEO of Cura, and a former Facebook executive, Helen Toner, the director of strategy for Georgetown's Center for Security and Emerging Technology and a veteran of Open Philanthropy, and Tasha Macaulay, a former tech CEO and member of the UK board of the EA charity Effective Ventures. Concerns about corporate governance and the board's ability to oversee Altman became much more urgent for several board members after they saw a demo of GPT-4, a more powerful AI that could ace the AP biology test in the summer of 2022. Things like ChatGPT and GPT-4 were meaningful shifts toward the board realizing that the stakes are getting higher here, Toner said. It's not like we are all going to die tomorrow, but the board needs to be functioning well. Toner and Macaulay had already begun to lose trust in Altman to review new products for risks before they were released. OpenAI had set up a joint safety board with Microsoft, a key backer of OpenAI that had special access to use this technology in its products, maybe because they gave them $14 billion. Just a thought. During one meeting in the winter of 2022, as the board weighed how to release the 3 somewhat controversial enhancements to GPT-4, Altman claimed all 3 had been approved by the Joint Safety Board. The Boyd. the board. Toner asked for proof and found that only one had actually been approved. Around the same time, Microsoft launched a test of the still unreleased GPT-4 in India, the first instance of the revolutionary code being released in the wild, without approval from the Joint Safety Board. And no one had bothered to inform OpenAI's board that the safety approval had been skipped. The independent board members found out when one of them was stopped by an OpenAI employee in the hallway on the way out of a 6-hour board meeting. Never once in that meeting had Altman or Brockman mentioned the breach. So they had a 6-hour meeting and no mention of this. Let's see. Can you say awkward? Awkward. Then one night in the summer of 2023, an OpenAI board member overheard a person at a dinner party discuss an OpenAI startup fund. The fund was launched in 2021 to invest in AI-related startups, and OpenAI had announced it would be managed by OpenAI. But the board member was overhearing complaints that the profits from the fund weren't going to OpenAI investors. This was news to the board, so they asked Altman. Over months, directors learned that Altman owned the fund personally. OpenAI executives first said it had been for tax reasons, then eventually explained Altman had set up the fund because it was faster and only a temporary arrangement. OpenAI said Altman earns no fees or profits from the fund, a very highly unusual arrangement. But Sam earns all those fees from the fund, and Sam puts all that money into his pocket. So to the independent board members, the administrative oversight defied belief. Cast previous oversights as part of a possible pattern of deliberate deception. For instance, they also hadn't been alerted the previous fall when OpenAI released ChatGPT, at the time considered a research preview that used existing technology, but that ended up taking the world by storm. News Corp, owner of the Wall Street Journal, has a content licensing partnership with OpenAI. They disclose that in the article. In late September, Sutskever emailed Toner asking if she had time to talk the next day. This was highly unusual. They didn't really talk outside of board meetings. On the phone, Sutskever hemmed and hawed before coughing up a clue. You should talk to Mira more. Murati had been promoted to Chief Technology Officer of OpenAI in May of 2022 and had effectively been running the day-to-day ever since. When Toner called her, Murati described how she saw as Altman's toxic management style had been causing problems for years, and how the dynamic between Altman and Brockman, who reported to her but would go to Altman anytime she tried to rein him in, made it almost impossible for her to do her job. Murati had raised some of those issues directly with Altman months earlier, and Altman had responded by bringing the head of HR to their one-on-one meetings for weeks until she finally told him she didn't intend to share her feedback with the board. Toner went back to Sutskever, the company's oracular chief scientist. He made clear he had lost trust in Altman for numerous reasons, including his tendency to pit senior employees against each other. In 2021, Sutskever had mapped out and launched a team to pursue the next research direction for OpenAI, but months later, another OpenAI researcher, Jacob Pachaki, began pursuing something very similar. The teams merged, and Pachaki took over after Sutskever turned his focus to AI safety. Altman later elevated Pachaki to research director and privately promised both of them they could lead the research direction of the company, which led to months of lost productivity. Sutskever had been waiting for a moment when the board dynamics would allow for Altman to be replaced as CEO. Treading carefully in terror of being found out by Altman, Murati and Sutskever spoke to each of the independent board members over the next few weeks. It was only because they were in daily touch that the independent directors caught Altman in a particularly egregious lie. Toner had published a paper in October that repeated criticisms of OpenAI's approach to safety. Altman was livid. He told Sutskever that Macaulay had said Toner should obviously leave the board over the article. Macaulay was taken aback when she heard this account from Sutskever. She knew she had said no such thing. Sutskever and Murati had been collecting evidence, and now Sutskever was willing to share. He emailed Toner, Macaulay, and D'Angelo 2 lengthy PDF documents using Gmail's self-destructing email function. It's like Mission Impossible over here. One was about Altman, the other about Brockman. The Altman document consisted of dozens of examples of his alleged lies and other toxic behavior, largely backed up by screenshots from Murati's Slack channel. In one of them, Altman had told Murati that the company's legal department had said that GPT-4 Turbo didn't need to go through the Joint Safety Board review. Then Murati checked with the company's top lawyer. He said he had not said that. The document about Brockman largely focused on his alleged bullying. If they were going to act, Sutskever warned they had to act quickly. And so, on the afternoon of Thursday, November 16, 2023, he and the 3 independent board members logged into a video call and voted to fire Altman. Knowing Murati was unlikely to agree to be interim CEO if she had to report to Brockman, they also voted to remove Brockman from the board. After the vote, the independent board members told Sutskever they had been worried that he'd been sent as a spy to test their loyalty. That night, Murati, at a conference, when the 4 board members called her to say that they were firing Altman the next day and to ask her to step in as interim CEO, she agreed. When she asked why they were firing him, they wouldn't tell her. Have you communicated this to Satya? Murati said, knowing how essential Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella's commitment to their partnership was to the company. They had not. They decided that Murati would tell Microsoft just before the news was posted on OpenAI's website. Altman's surprise firing instantly became an explosive headline around the world. But the board had no answers for employees or the wider public for why Altman was fired, beyond that he had not been consistently candid with the board. Friday night, OpenAI's board and executive team held a series of increasingly contentious meetings. Murati had grown concerned that the board was putting OpenAI at risk by not better preparing for the repercussions of Altman's firing. At one point, she and the rest of the executive team gave the board a 30-minute deadline to explain why they fired Altman or resign, or else the executive team would quit en masse. The board felt they couldn't divulge that it had been Murati who had given them some of the most detailed evidence of Altman's management failings. They had banked on Murati calming employees while they searched for a CEO. Instead, she was leading her colleagues in a revolt against the board. A narrative began to spread among Altman's allies that the whole thing was a coup by Sutskever, driven by his anger over Pachaki's promotion and boosted by Toner's anger that Altman had tried to push her off the board. Sutskever was astounded. He had expected the employees of OpenAI to cheer. By Monday morning, almost all of them had signed a letter threatening to quit if Altman wasn't reinstated. Among the signatures were Murati's and Sutskever's. It had become clear that the only way to keep the company from imploding was to bring back Altman. Okay. So I just want to hang on, so guys, I want to see something here for a second. Okay. So anyway, so to finish up the story here for a second, I'm sorry, guys, I thought there was a little more there to this, but okay. So to finish up the story here. So basically, so Sam Altman gets brought back. These board members get removed. You know, they get pushed out. Sutskever goes on to basically open up and start his own business, which is kind of a very interesting story in itself, because that, I think his business is already valued at like $30 billion or something along those lines. But so there's a couple different ways to look at this. Number one, you could spend a lot of time analyzing the company culture. You could look at corporate politics. You could look at the, boardroom politics. You could, again, is this the first time that a chief executive has pitted, other executives against each other or other employees against each other and has been very Machiavellian in his methods? No, certainly not. I mean, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of stories out there of, chief executives or presidents of companies, high up, just manipulating employees and doing things like this. I think, though, that Sam Altman is a particularly unethical and unscrupulous actor. I think that this, it's kind of funny. There's a couple times in my life where I've seen people and like my spider sense, if you will, has gone off. And I remember the first time I saw Sam Bankman-Fried sitting in his beanbag on CNBC doing an interview, and how he's promoted as this wily, incredible tech genius. And I just sat there and I looked and I was just like, "You've got to be kidding me! No way!" Like it just my, like I said, my spider sense went off immediately. Another time was the first time I saw Sam Altman, and sometimes you just you read people and you get a feel for them and you're just like, yeah, that guy just immediately rubs me the wrong way. And I think that and I think that this article finally does a good job of just showing how this guy has moved incredibly recklessly with this company. Now, lucky for him, he's obviously besties with Microsoft CEO. And unfortunately, Microsoft, having invested $14 billion in OpenAI to get him up and running, they weren't about to let that investment go sideways or implode. So, Sam Altman got right on the phone. Now, what they should have done is they obviously should have called Nardella, the CEO of Microsoft, and they should have cleared this with him before they did anything. They should have been, much more. But it was so crazy because they all want, the board members and the chief technology officer, they all wanted the same thing. But it was like they were all stabbing each other in the back at the same time. Like they were literally, it was like a coup within a coup within a coup. Like they were all trying to shove each other out. But what I find absolutely wild about this is that, Sam Altman, for years, as he built this thing, it was all about this effective altruism. Oh, we're building this for the better of mankind. We're building this to help humanity, and we're building this for this, or whatever, this, that. And as it turns out that no, none of that was any of that was true. Basically, Sam Altman has built this for one reason and one reason only, and that is to get insanely stupid rich. And he didn't have the money to fund this himself at the beginning. So he basically had to sell people on this idea that it was, it's going to be this nonprofit and I'm not going to have any ownership and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, what has Sam Altman spent the last year doing? Oh, that's right. He wants to turn this into a for-profit company so that he can make himself a billionaire. That is his whole goal. That is his whole goal at the end of the day. This is exactly why Elon Musk left, because Elon saw through all of this guy's smokescreen. And, so again, I think that this, Sam Altman at the end of the day is a character that I think is a highly flawed, highly unethical individual. And, and again, I don't agree. I really hope that he is not allowed to turn OpenAI from a nonprofit into a for-profit enterprise, because I think that just, that sets a very bad precedent, and we'll have to see here. But also what is very troubling here is just the complete lack of safety protocols. Like they have this protocol, the safety protocol board, but they don't, Sam Altman could care less about it. He's just, again, it's the standard Silicon Valley, move quickly and break things. That is exactly what he wants to do. Move quickly and break things. Who cares if it blows up the world in the process? He could care less, as long as he makes his money, as long as he's driving his, $4 million sports car on the street. That's all that he really cares about. So, but anyway, so I hope everybody found this maybe a little illuminating. Maybe found this a little interesting. We will see how this whole story plays out. And so I know this episode was a little longer. I appreciate people kind of hanging in there with me as we went through this story. But again, I thought this was really interesting. I was really excited to cover this one, and I hope people enjoyed this episode. So with that, I will say, we'll obviously continue to follow the story of OpenAI. We'll see what happens if they can or don't turn this into a for-profit at some point. I think he has to do that by the end of the year, or he's got funding on the line and all kinds of stuff. So we'll see how that plays out. But If you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has an awesome day out there, and I will see everyone again real soon. Thanks a lot.